everyone. Welcome to the Q&A for the Call Your Mom short film block at the 10th Annual Seattle Asian American Film Festival. My name is Annie Kuo, and I will be moderating the panel today with our filmmakers and actors. We are so thankful that you are taking some time to join us. I want to thank all the filmmakers that are here today. We were just touching base briefly before starting this panel, and I just want to have them introduce themselves by name and their role in each of the films that they represent. So let's start with, to my right is Alberta Poon. And please tell us where you are, which city, state you are in, or country, if that were.
I'm Alberta Poon, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. I wrote and directed Crouching Comic.
And next is Rosie Chu Pidcock.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosie Chu Pidcock. I am currently on the ancestral territories of the Charrua people, which is in typically known as Montevideo, Uruguay, because I'm on a shoot. But I'm usually on the ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people, otherwise known as Vancouver, Canada. But I just want to say these are not my usual nails. It's for this shoot. It's weird. I talk a lot with my hands, so don't be alarmed. These like red talons will just come into frame. Thank you, Annie, for hosting us.
You bet. So she's not really a Salinista only for the part. Okay.
Part that requires me to be in Uruguay. Anyways, I digress.
And next is Frances Mortel.
Hello, everyone. I'm Frances Mortel, and my pronouns are she, hers, and I'm the director and writer of Dear Nanay. I am currently in the traditional lands of Spokane tribes, technically in Mount Spokane right now because my family is skiing.
Ooh, that sounds fun. It's a beautiful sunny day today, so I'm just imagining the different landscape there. And then last but not least, Shikong Zhu, representing Snake Trail.
Hi, I'm Shikong. Thanks for hosting us, Annie, and I'm the writer-director for Snake Trail.
Awesome. We have 4 of the 5 films represented. I want to say that it was such a pleasure to watch each of the shorts. I enthusiastically volunteered to moderate the panel because I'm a mother of a daughter, and then also 3 of the 5 touched on themes of grief and loss, which are close to my heart since I have lost a loved one in the past couple of years. So I really appreciate that that those 3 took on these projects. I watched the films with a group of young widowed people, and some of whom included Asian Americans, and through the themes of mother, child, dating, even that came up in Crouching Comic, and the pressure to have a grandchild. There's a lot of themes that resonated. So it was just a wonderful block of films to engage with. Let's start with like a very basic high-level question to kind of bring us into the conversation. I'm wondering if y'all could each speak about what inspired you to take on this project on that particular theme, or how did you get involved? And if we can go and we can start by going in the same order that we did with the intros, starting with Alberta.
Sure. So I wrote Crouching Comic. It's loosely based on my experience as an Asian American pursuing a career in a creative field, which, we're not very, it's not traditionally a world where you see a lot of people who look like us. And so I teamed up with comedian Katie Wen, who's the star of Crouching Comic, who's also a working stand-up comic. And just together, we were like, what are all the issues we deal with in life that we can kind of bring light to, but make people laugh at the same time? What our experiences are like. And I think one of the funniest things is like, the world doesn't really welcome you with open arms, but neither does your mother. Like being a first generation American with an an immigrant mother, I don't think they understand, or I don't want to generalize, but I have a lot of first generation Asian American friends who are in creative worlds. And it's really hard for us to talk to our mothers about what we do. And some of them, when you talk to them, they don't really get it. And they wish you had a career as a doctor, so we just thought it'd be real fun to shed light on trying to be an Asian American woman doing what we really want to do. I used to be a musician, and then I pursued filmmaking. So we just chose stand-up comic, since that's what Katie is, as the role of as the protagonist role of what she's pursuing. And I don't know, I think a lot of comedy comes from that.
Yeah, and it was a natural role to step into on the screen, because obviously that's her shtick.
Yeah.
She's not only convincing but hilarious in there, and I just love the talking back from the fridge and the talking from the photo frame, which was a fun sort of aesthetic. I am curious about some of the techniques that you employed.
For sure.
I'm do we lead with that? Or go to the next one? Can we just go ahead, since we're there, and tell me about what kind of what sort of sparked that particular approach to I guess instead of putting the person in the room, you guys had it. Was it for the comedy of it?
Okay, so there's a few reasons. So we have a scene where she, the star of the film, Layla, gets in an argument with some pictures that come to life, and you're like, why is this happening? For one, it was COVID safe to not have actors in the same room. But the second reason was, the main reason was, as we don't want the audience to really know, is this her are these her inner demons, or is this things that people like Katie and I have heard from men? So it's kind of a combination of literal terrible things men have said to us pursuing these things, and then it's your inner demons, when you start having when you don't believe in yourself, can I do this? Those voices in your head, this isn't funny, or you're not good enough. So
yeah,
we just did special effects, pretty high level special effects of pictures coming to life and arguing with each other, which was fingers crossed that they worked. And I thought it turned out really great.
Yeah, I think it turned out really great too. And by the way, just in the way that you answer the question, I kind of want to infuse that in the way that the rest of the panel addresses how you, what inspired you to make the film, or how you got involved, focusing on the theme of call your mom, and how Alberta sort of laced in the relationship that the protagonist would have with their mother. So if you wouldn't mind, when as we continue, kind of threading in that whole theme of the mother bond, or the relationship with the mother, or grandmother, as it were, and dear Nene. So Rosie, we're up for you for your piece.
Great. Well, the two main characters literally call their mom. Oh, one calls their mom, one calls their dad. So it's an easy tie-in. Yeah, so my film is called Esther and Sai. It is based on the true story of my mom, who is a Chinese immigrant from Singapore, meeting her best friend Esther Aneki, who is a Nigerian immigrant, at nursing school in 1976. So this true story. They were pretty much the only two students of color in the class, and they gravitated towards one another, and ended up becoming friends and staying friends for 40 years before I lost my mom 5 years ago. So grief and loss was really my pathway into becoming an artist. Prior to that, I took, under pressure from my mom, pursued a practical career, getting a business degree in marketing, And I lived and worked in Beijing and Shanghai, where I was able to really connect with my heritage in a really beautiful and grounded way. Became fluent in Mandarin, but after through the process of healing, decided to pursue acting and also filmmaking. And so when the opportunity came to make this film through Voices with Impact, they were funding a specific program on immigration and mental health. I lost my mom to suicide. It seemed like the right time to share the story of immigrant women who make a lot of sacrifices around their mental health when there was like way less discourse about it. And the impacts of subtle and unsubtle racism on your feelings of self-worth. So the film was really driven both by that like female friendship, that bond, that solidarity they had in being othered, and trying to move through this career that had a lot of demands on them in terms of caretaking and sacrifice. So yeah, that was the inspiration for it. And then there is a scene where Sai, played by myself, my mom's character, calls her mom, and really just has to keep it together because, sacrifices have been made to afford someone to make that journey. And there's a lot of expectations and pressure around academic performance, like financial security. My mom was the eldest and ended up sponsoring my grandma, my popo, and her family to come over. So just trying to be in that mind space and imagine what it was like, and try and instigate that intergenerational healing that can be really powerful.
Yeah.
So that was the inspiration.
It was such an inspiring and powerful short film. The group that I watched it with, everyone was like, oh, when they saw the real life photograph of her mom and her friend. And that makes me wonder, did that scene really happen where they came into class and they noticed that they were the only students of color and they're like, yeah, we're going to be besties? Is it
that was from my own imagination. I'm not able to ask my mom directly how they met, and when I talked with my auntie Esther, she couldn't quite recall like where exactly, like which class they saw each other in. So it's like it's possible that's how it happened.
right?
But I very much from a like director's perspective was like, what if it were a wide shot and then they like met eyes across the room? And so yeah, that was from my imagination.
But very plausible that could have happened.
Very plausible, yeah.
By the way, just note, since we just talked to Alberta, and both of y'all have pieces where, Rosie, in your film, they're calling their parents, and in Alberta, she's talking to her mom through the photo frame. And in Crouching Comic, she's like, I love you, Mom, right? And it's like, okay. It was a similar thing, I think, Rosie and Esther and Sai, where the daughters are pouring out their hearts, and then the parents are like,
yeah. They're trying to seek that emotional support, but I know in my mom's case, this kind of happened in our household too. It's like there isn't that, like, there's no words of affirmation, there's no like physical affection, and the expression of love is different than I've come to know it in like a Western culture. And so I think Sai says, oh, what about our family? And then the mom is like, call us after your exam. Just like hangs up. Like, this is expensive, long distance calls. Just like hangs up. So yeah, it's yeah, absolutely.
So it was super culturally on point, especially cross-generationally. And that's a good segue into Francis's film, because it was a love letter. It felt like a poet, like a visual poem almost, with the split screen and the layers of fabric and the kind of, I don't want to say claustrophobic, although maybe that was what your intention was, to make us feel, but it was such a arresting kind of visual piece. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what inspired that, other than the autobiographical aspect, but also how you chose that kind of creative approach to making the piece.
Yeah, so just really tying it into like the kind of matriarchal mother theme it's as you mentioned, it's really kind of a love letter to my grandmother. Nanay in Tagalog really translates to mother, but I think, you know, similarly in other cultures, growing up, being raised by your grandparents, you a lot of us also call our grandmothers nanay or nana in some cultures even. And this project really sprang out of a unfinished and still work in progress photo series. So I'm also a photographer, and the photo series really is kind of an introspection of my own experience as a mom. So also disclaimer, if I have like a preschooler coming in and just like screaming, that's him. Thanks for cutting it, editor. Hi. Yeah, I'm glad it's going to be edited if that happens. But going back, I mean, it's really, so during pandemic, this sense of claustrophobia, or like finding that refuge in this I guess it was an introspection of my domestic role as a mother, and also kind of like breaking out of that, of that trope of being a mom, and also like the required matrilineal labor as an immigrant and as a brown woman. I'm relatively a new immigrant in the US. I moved here in 2016. So I feel that I'm always in this kind of like transit, not here, not there situation. So I think with this piece, I was really exploring the sense of space and the discomfort, but kind of finding that refuge in the discomfort. And then I thought of my grandmother instantly, because I visited her in 2019 in Hong Kong, and she's been a domestic worker most of her life. When she was raising, I mean, my mom and dad were working. They would leave us at my grandmother, and my grandma would be doing laundry for the neighbors and also a seamstress. So that's why the visuals are, about that. And I was just really kind of like recreating kind of a recollection of the memories of the things that I've heard when she was taking care of me. And it was like I'm a multitasker as a mom, especially during the pandemic. You were required to like work remotely, but you're also like working as a mom. Yeah. So that's it. So I was kind of reimagining her taking care of us, but also working, and kind of like just really hearing it. So yeah, I was exploring that, like, just like sound and also the visuals of me as a mom. Yeah.
Wow, touches on so many themes, past, current, and the legacy you want to take into the future. So it's just so beautiful. And you actually touched on something that I want to ask the whole panel, if anyone else, after we hear from Shikong on, so I can go ahead and pepper this now and have you think about it. But I am curious about what it's been like to share your films with audiences during the pandemic, and then like Alberta mentioned, COVID safe filming decisions that were made. If there's anything like that. Related to the fact that we live in these interesting pandemic times that affected your filmmaking. So Shikong, let's hear from you on the question of the inspiration for this project. It was a really moving story about in Snake Trail, about how this girl reconciles, what is the situation before her with her own kind of personal remembrance and love, and taking it forward into the future, regardless of how she's recognized by society because of mistakes that were made.
Yeah. So I guess so Snake's Trail was my thesis out of film school. So basically what inspired me to make a story like that was that during my time in film school, I always needed to make stories that I feel like there's an audience for. And for my thesis, I wanted to be kind of just be an artist for once and not consider like what the audience is gonna think. I want to just make something that's deeply personal to myself. That's why I chose the theme of like magical realism, as well as the Chinese spiritual paganist taboos. It's kind of like I was thinking when I was conceptualizing the film that what is something that is not talked enough on screen, and something like that naturally came to my mind, because now reflecting back, I was also dealing with slowly losing a family member due to illness. So that story was kind of me just, I guess, prepping myself for the inevitable. So yeah, but at the time I was thinking, oh, I want to just make something about this and see how the character will react to those life circumstances. And that's how I initially had the idea to make it. Yeah, and it was a fun journey, and it was made right on the cusp of COVID breaking out in the end of 2019. So it was so interesting to reflect on. I actually haven't rewatched that movie for a long time until last night. So now I was like, basically I lost that family member during those years, and now rewatching that film brings a lot of feelings, resurfacing a lot of thoughts, and yeah, so it's definitely such a journey.
I am so thankful that you took your personal experience and anticipatory grief to create this autobiographical / fictional film for because it was very moving. And I thank you for touching on kind of the pandemic, the timing of when the film was made and came out. Anyone else want to touch on that? We have about 10 minutes, but I want to kind of finish up on the pandemic question, maybe take one, answers to like one more question before we wrap. But did anyone else have anything that you would want to contribute on in terms of sharing the film with audiences during the pandemic, or anything pandemic specific that affected the filmmaking?
I can share briefly. This is my first festival circuit film. I'm relatively new to filmmaking. I'd made a couple of like a DIY web series that I put on YouTube, and another short film, very off the cuff. So my only experiences with festivals have been in the pandemic. And it's been interesting to see, even just at the beginning of 2022, like the pivot back, like it was kind of like hybrid for a while. It's like pivoting back to all online. So honestly, shout out to all film festivals, including Seattle Asian American Film Festival, for like, just like, keeping the spirit alive.
Yeah.
It's like, it's truly a lot of work to constantly be doing that dance. So I really appreciate that. So a lot of our screenings have been online, which I think I can attest sometimes, it feels a little more disconnected, but when someone does like buy the online pass and then like watches it and messages you, it means so much more, which is really special. And then we were very fortunate to have our film screened in a movie theater on the big screen in January at the Chilliwack Independent Film Festival. So that was a really great experience. And Esther was actually able to meet Ivana, who plays her in the film, and meet in person for the first time, because all of their prep had been through Zoom. I feel like there's always like a little sparkle of something that pops up as we're in this constant back and forth. And then as far as the actual filming, like we were quite lucky. Like we do have scenes that involve BG. People were willing to come out. Even this was before vaccines. Even like we shot in April 2021. So we were quite lucky that there was like a low budget program with the performance union in BC that we could still operate safely, but we didn't have to pay the cost to do tests. So masks and distancing and sanitization. And otherwise we were, fortunate to be able to shoot. We had to cut a few things, but most things we were able to keep.
Yeah, thankfully for us. That's so cool that there was an in-person meeting. The real life character and the actor. And every now and then these COVID times throws us a bone, right? Like keep us still in the fight. Is there anyone else who had anything other? Oh, I see Francis.
I just want to add, like, having that, because I mean previously in the Philippines I was a production designer for film, and I was really kind of like a lover of like going to film festivals. And then when I moved here, I was luckily able to like go to some before it really closed down. And then when it opened back, like I went to like Telluride, probably like kind of like the big festival I went to like in person before it closed down again. But I think the hybrid and also the online opens up accessibility for festivals, especially the regional ones and even the big ones. And you know, and in some it's still like, you know, there's a question of internet access and also like, you know, the cost of passes. But there are some like Slam Dance just became like $10 for the entire festival. And I think, you know, it and I'm kind of just like glad to have that kind of accessibility for people, and you know, to be able to share it to others, like, you know, this like our block is like open to United States, so we are able to like, you know, to share it to other people across the country, and I think that's a good thing. But of course, you know, we're all like filmmakers and film lovers, and there's this magic inside the cinema and to culminate and all those stuff, and I'm all for that too. But I think I'm seeing like this also, like, you know, accessibility is also a great thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. When we had my late husband's Zoom memorial, there were 300 devices that were logged in, and a lot of them were couples. And I just realized, and they came from like Asia and you know, other countries, that would not be likely if we had an in-person event exclusively. So there are some advantages to offering programming virtually, right? It makes it accessible to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to be there. And so, you know, I guess there is a silver lining sometimes to what's otherwise like really, really catastrophic or otherwise not preferred. So thank you for all your comments on that piece. I want to ask 1.5 more questions, and that is about what you hope audiences take away from your film. I think we all got something that's personal to us, but I'm curious about the sort of origin intention that y'all had when you put this out into the world. And then the half question is there anything that you're working on next? And where can we find you to stay connected to your work? Also, if I forget, I want to say that it would have been so much fun to have you guys here in Seattle and party with you through the festival, but I hope that all of you will consider submitting another film to our festival so that you can come to Seattle after all of this calms down and we can meet in person. So in terms of the 1.5 question, again, that was, you know, what did you hope that audiences would take away from your film? And then what are you working on next, if anything, or how can we connect with you so that we can continue following your work? I think we haven't heard from Alberta for a while, so can I put you in the hot seat?
Sure. So writing a comedy, one of the things I guess that's like most important, writing a comedy that's so closely tied to my identity and what I'm trying to shed light on, is that people learn something but also get like a kick out of it. So the film is played at quite a handful of film festivals, but I attended my first in-person one actually yesterday at McMinnville. So that's like an hour away from Portland, and it's just like a short film festival. That's a pretty good Oregon one. So I haven't seen it with an audience, and the audience was predominantly white. If you don't know Oregon. So we went, like me and my crew, which by the way was an all Asian cast and crew, made Crouching Comic, which is, again, a feat filming in Portland. It's nothing like Seattle. It does not have a gigantic Asian population. So we went to McMinnville together yesterday, and it was beautiful. And my producer was like, I'm a little nervous that we're showing this in front of a white audience. And I was like, why? She's just like, because, you know, we made this for us. But I was like, but the themes are universal, you know? So it played, and it got like, people thought it was hilarious. Like people were laughing really hard, and you can't fake that, right? Like if you show a drama, people can come up to you afterwards and be like, oh, that was so good, but you don't really know if they're just saying that to you. But if you put yourself out there with the comedic film, if people don't laugh, like, oh my God, you want to like crawl under a blanket and die. So seeing it yesterday with that live audience that was not predominantly Asian, was it felt really good to like, okay, this is cool. Like we're seeing it in front of people, and it got like a really good reaction. So that was really cool. So I don't know, like people like came up to me and were like, you know, the mother-daughter themes, like this white woman that was a producer on another film was like, you know, like I know, like she was like, I know I'm like a white woman, but like the mother-daughter themes, like it, like I super connected with that, and that felt like amazing to me. So I guess that's why I wrote this film, to just
Yeah.
connect with
Universal themes, but maybe
yeah,
fresh faces on them.
exactly. We need some representation up in here. And for the second part of the question, what I'm working on is I wrote a pilot called Cul-de-sac, which is based on my experience as the only Asian girl growing up in the heart of Mormon, Utah. So I grew up in Orem, Utah, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but it's basically like the Mecca of Mormonism. And I like did not grow up Mormon or with any people of color. So I wrote like a comedy, dramedy, 30-minute pilot that I'm going to shop around the next.
Submit it to SAAFF. I want to watch that.
Well, it's gonna be just a pilot. I'm not planning on making it because it's like I'm trying to break into the next level of my career. So this is something that normally I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. Like when you're writing something, you're writing within budget so much because you know you can only pull off so much, right? So this is something that I'm gonna try to like sell to Netflix or sell to Hulu, you know what I mean? Like get to the next level. And obviously that's a very big goal, but the idea is you write something that's personal, that's good. And even if you don't get that project greenlit, like maybe I can get hired as a writer on a different show or something. So that's like where all my energy is right now.
Well, that's Ali Wong wrote "Always Be My Maybe," and she got that. She got to kiss all her Asian American dreamboats, and I'm sure that was beyond her wild imagination.
Yep.
Would get there. So I love that you're being strategic and kind of taking it to the next level. And there's people who blazed a trail for you on Netflix. So we're sending lots of good vibes your way.
For sure.
Awesome. Drama. We're gonna look for that one. That sounds like it has a lot of promise.
Yeah, it's got built-in comedy.
Yeah. Utah, Asian American in Utah.
Yeah.
Is it Amren, Utah? I drove through Utah last
Yeah,
time.
Orem.
Okay, Orem. Okay,
Yeah.
I passed it on there, and I was like, "Oh, what? These are so obscure. Some of these names."
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna send you an email and be like, "How did you end up in Orem?"
Oh, yeah, we should connect. I'll tell you all about it.
Okay, yeah, I want to hear it. Then that way, maybe I can get a little link to your pilot when you when you're done. So we have like 3 more panelists to get to hearing about what you're working on next, and also the question of what you hope the audiences would take away from Esther and Zai, Snake Trail, and Dear Nanai.
Okay, you said Esther and Sai first, so I thought you were calling me out. Okay, I'm ready. I'm excited to watch this Only Asian in Utah. Maybe it could cross over with like.
You can get on. You can get on our email chain.
Okay, great. I'm like seeing a crossover with like Book of Mormon, and it's like a musical. I don't know. My mind was going places. I was excited.
Definitely connect because I loved your film, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So beautiful.
Yeah, let's see. So, okay, so what I hope people will take away. Well, I think as a second generation, like Chinese, Canadian, I hope I made this film for first and second gen immigrants to open up a dialogue about mental health that might be like awkward with your parents because they, went through a lot or sacrificed a lot. And then like, maybe just lived in a time when like expressing yourself was not very safe. And just try and break some of those like cycles of intergenerational trauma. That's what I hope people of color can see when they watch it, and see solidarity between different groups from different parts of the world. I find when I watch media made by Hollywood, I see more representation, but I see that it's like, okay, all Asian cast, all Black cast, I feel like there's still this segmentation that's going on. And I would love to see more stories that reflect my real life, where there are people from all different parts of the world, either, being in solidarity with one another, having conflict with one another, just living. And I think as the Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate movements were really coming to the forefront in 2020, and I was really my moment of being like, hey, like, I think Esther, as a dark-skinned Black woman, has a different experience of oppression and racism than my mom as a Chinese woman. And just reflecting on that, and that, like, not all people of color are monolith, and we're not all grouped in this one shared experience. We might have common experiences. So I was hoping for that. And then I hope that white people watch it and are like, oh, the person who played the university administrator who leads Psy to the janitor's closet.
Oh, yeah.
So Jeff, he's like a wonderful acting coach and actor in the community in Vancouver. And when we did a table read, he was like, wow, Rosie, I didn't, that he was like, that moment was very powerful for me to take on as a character, because it's like he just thought he was being nice and helping her go to work, right? So I think, again, learning that maybe white supremacy didn't teach all white people to have ill will, but that's just how we're conditioned, to be like, oh, you belong here with this other Asian lady. So I hope that white folks can watch it and just kind of get a sense of the more subtle microaggressions and things that happen on the day-to-day that bring that awareness.
Yeah.
In terms of what I'm working on next, I'm hoping to adapt Esther and Psy into a series. Hopefully also kind of bring it to the next level. We were lucky to get a lot of feedback through our workshops with Voices with Impact. Just that people were like, oh, I like these characters, I'd like to see more of them. And just kind of working on their first year of college in the first season. So yeah, that's kind of my main focus at the moment.
So Esther and Psy to be continued.
Yes.
Yeah, we like really it ended on that note, right, with the rolling credits of them.
Yeah. Well, I see the short as a prelude. It's a setup to their first meeting and kind of teases what's to come. So I think it lends itself naturally to further development.
Right. Awesome. So I'm so glad that there's something that a continued storyline that we can see. For reminding me about that scene with the because it was a little twist, right, when the administrator is like befriending her briefly to walk her through. I'm like, oh, he's a good guy. And he's a good guy. He's just a little ignorant.
Yeah. Well, initially when I wrote it, I had like mean white classmate like teases her and brings her there intentionally. I'm like, no, it cuts way more if it was unintentional. Yeah. And so that was actually a process of revision that we went through.
Yeah, it was a good creative choice for sure. So thank you. These are awesome. I wish we could see. We have now mastered connecting over Zoom because we're like 2 years into it, and I feel like that these conversations are connected, and I wish we had more time. We have 2 more to hear from. So Shikang, somehow you kind of like moved over on my screen. You and Francis like switched places. I don't know how that happened. That I haven't learned from Zoom yet. But maybe we could just go ahead and go with you, and then we'll wrap up with Dear Nanai. So on Snake Trail, could you tell us about your intention for the audience to take away, and then what you're working on next?
Sure thing. So I guess my intention, there wasn't any like set intention, but I was trying to portray something that was like considered a cultural taboo in China. And you don't see a lot of people making films about, what happens in the morgue, or, especially if it's like about seeing your own mother in the morgue. Even when shooting that scene, it was kind of hard to like explain to the actors and the people on the crew to make sure that, hey, this is okay, and sneaking them like red pockets, because it was considered bad luck when they, play a body on screen. So because I shot it in China, and there were a lot of concerns and people like were worried that, oh, why are you shooting this? And I wasn't even able to get into the real morgue because people are like just scared, or it's considered taboo. So that was interesting enough, and I definitely, that reaffirms my intention to sort of like explore that on screen and just kind of showing people, not in a voyeuristic way, but just showing people like how that's like, how that sector of like the Chinese people's spiritual world is. So that was kind of my intention, I guess. But also after the film completed, it was like during the middle of the pandemic, it kind of gave the film somewhat like a new purpose, because it's dealing about grief and loss and the death of a family member. So I was hoping it kind of like bringing people healing and bringing people solace during that time, like in the middle, like by the end of 2020, I think that was when it's completed. And that was right in the middle of the pandemic, and a lot of people lost their family members. And I guess I wasn't trying to tell people how to deal with grief, but I hope that's like shedding light on a certain way of dealing with grief and making people realize that they're not alone. So that was sort of my intention. It sort of shifted over the course of the completion of the film. And in terms of what new things I'm working on, I actually worked on another short film after that. It was, I got some production funds from the Sloan, Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. It's a foundation that sponsors films that gives realistic portrait of science or scientists. So that film is about a girl who reconnects with her sister who passed away using the technology of VR. So I don't know. After making those two films, now I'm looking back. Oh, there is a theme connecting the two films. Maybe it has something to deal with what I experienced during these years. Yeah. So the two of them ended up being kind of therapeutic for me and sort of reflecting my mental state over these years. Yeah, that film is still in post, but it's gonna come out sometime this year, hopefully.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to review it and see it. I'm
Yeah.
so thankful, all of the experiences that you have had. I mean, we turn it into even subconscious advocacy. And if it comes out in the world as something concrete, into an experience that we're trying to work through or part of our process, it heals us and it can heal others. So, I mean, I'm already kind of like stealing from the end piece to wrap this up after Francis goes, but just the fact that everyone here has used some personal experience or observation in the world, universal themes, that are resonating with people, even those folks that are people of color. It's a gift to bring out these underrepresented stories and voices, because it does end up impacting an audience. So with that, let's end with Francis to tell us about what you.
So much pressure. So much pressure. But before I answer that, I just want to say that I'm so honored to be like watching actually the films of like my fellow filmmakers here, and I love all the films with Shikong. I just want to shout out that I was sobbing so hard when that scene. I'm not gonna spoil it, but yeah, the hand scene that she was giving something, I was just like, oh, I'm not ready for this. Why is this happening? But yeah, that was beautiful. And you know what? To answer like what's the intention? I'm just, I guess, going back to being a mother myself, a parent myself, and moving to United States. I'm in the other side of the state of Washington that is quite very white. Alberta was saying, Portland is white. I mean, Spokane is, very, very, very white. We're near Idaho borders. So yeah, you can imagine. Sorry?
Like Utah Junior.
Maybe. Yeah, you say it right. And, to be able to tell stories that are not only personal, but, I have a 6-year-old, and I want him to be able to to know stories that are about us about this blended family. I mean, we're in this biracial family, and it's becoming kind of like challenging as a parent. You know, being married to a white guy, and you know, and living in this white space, and but living and being raised most of my life in the Philippines, it's just been kind of like really challenging. And I don't know. And with this piece, this is like experimental docu, very short in Tagalog. I mean, I had to make everyone read in subtitles. And like recently in Spokane International Film Fest was the first time I was able to see it on big screen, because I haven't been able to, like, you know, to attend any festivals, right? And to see it on big screen, hearing my voice in my native language just felt surreal. And I think for the first time, I felt like, and it's a self portrait. It's my body naked, and it was just like a weird like feeling of like I am seen and I am heard, and it's interesting. And after that, I wasn't really expecting for people to like even like get it. You know, I mean, it's fine, it's done. I've seen it, but you know, some strangers came to me, and then it was like, oh, okay, and that was just like, you know, that surreal feeling of like, you know, being seen and being felt. And I think that's maybe somehow that's the intention. Maybe I want somehow my kid and his generation of you know, Filipino Americans, of Asian Americans, to be, you know, to be seen and to be heard. Yeah, what my next project is, I'm currently working on a documentary, a short documentary on the following women, this group of women in Spokane, and how the evolution of their food culture and practice evolves as they integrate and or assimilate in United States. So that's it's under grant for through Apex Spokane, which I work with. So that's it.
Congratulations. Y'all are working on some very fascinating projects. I can't wait to kind of stay on top of. And by the way, I can't help, I want to know just quickly, Shikong, how, if you couldn't get in the morgue to film in China, what was, it looked real. So what was that? How did you end up constructing that backdrop? Or
So
in the morgue?
interesting enough, that that room was not a room. It was part of a hallway area, and we cropped out, but actually there are like elevator doors on the right of the you know, past the frame line. So it was actually like just a makeshift morgue set. And the cabinet was not a real cabinet you would find in a morgue. We actually had it sort of custom made of, like, bought it online from Taobao, if anyone knows. And because we couldn't, the morgue people wouldn't let us in, and the film crew didn't want to shoot in a morgue because it's bad luck. So and the actor doesn't want to go into like a real cabinet that stores bodies. So, you know, because of all of that stuff, we had to sort of construct that space. And it was also really hard to get rid of the cabinet after shooting, because we made it, and then it's not like it's just a bad omen to stand there when we're done filming. So it was definitely a really interesting scene to shoot. And I had to like put red pocket inside of the shoes of the actor who played the body, the mom, because it's supposed to, like, you know, just get rid of the bad luck of her playing that. So that's everything we've been through. But that's definitely the easily the most challenging scene. But it's not because it's the most emotional scene, because all of the concerns and cultural taboos. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and so you broke through and were able to break through and getting that for us. Well, congratulations everybody on your beautiful work and the work that you're working on to get out into the world. Thank you so much for making time to be here with us and for the conversation. Also want to thank the audience for joining us for the Call Your Mom short block.
I heard call your morgue. I heard it. Call the morgue. Call them right now. There's a red pocket from Shizong there waiting for us.
That's right. Yeah, put the red pockets in your shoes. Call your morgue. This is the pandemic death awareness campaign. That's what it should have been called, the death and dating awareness short film block. Thanks so much, everybody, again, for joining us, for doing your beautiful work, and for the audience for being part of the festival. And then I'm supposed to put one quick plug. If you want to watch some more films for the Seattle Asian American Film Festival 2022, you can check it out, available virtually from March 3rd through the 13th, 2022 at bit.ly/SAAFF, SAAFF 2002. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.